Ready?
Yeah.
And yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good.
All right, everyone, thank you for coming. Appreciate you attending the Tech Academy Friday Tech Talks. We're very fortunate to have Cesar Jimenez of Untold Studios presenting. I had the pleasure of having him host me and a group of students 2 years ago at Metaltoes when he worked there, and he shared a number of things that I thought were very valuable to the student body. So I asked him to come back and share his experience, both he's kind of getting into the program and working through software development, getting hired, and then also about some of his consulting that he's doing now in his current role. So with that, please give him a warm welcome to Cesar Jimenez.
Well, okay, first off, thank you 1,000 times for whatever was this. I really appreciate it. Thank you. My laptop, I guess, doesn't want to use this projector, and so we figured it out. Like I said, my name is Cesar. Just want to talk a little bit about me, just so that you all can know. It's me, Cesar, co-founder of Untold Studio, and I used to be an instructor at Copel, so I understand where y'all are at this point. I had 3 classes. Over there we do JavaScript, like full stack JavaScript. I taught the 201, 301, 101, 201, and 301. So I've seen somebody go from not knowing anything about JavaScript to building like full apps that get to talk to Gmail, Maps APIs and figure out all those things. A little bit about me. Technology is my passion. Hasn't always been. I took a path to it. I used to be an accountant in a previous life, and I hated it. I hated it so much. It was not what I wanted to do. Why did I become an accountant? My dad was a CPA, so when I was in high school, and they're letting you know, like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? All my friends were like, engineer, architect, and I was like, I don't know. What are you, Dad? And they said CPA. I was like, I'll be a CPA then. Did that for 7 years. Also, it didn't help that how like everybody like kids have chores growing up, right? Like clean your room, take out the trash and stuff. My chores were doing taxes with my dad. So like I feel like I had my future pretty much laid out for me. It just turned out that's not what I wanted to do. So this is a little preview of how my life was in accounting. How I felt on every day. Every day was like this. And how I was looking for a way out. So I vividly remember coding my first HTML page and falling in love with it. I actually researched like who gets to do this. Like I growing up, I didn't have a single developer friend. Like nobody that could point me into this direction into tech. It was I just stumbled on it. I did Codecademy HTML, just randomly searching for other things to do, and I coded my first HTML page there. I fell in love, and so my life in technology now feels a little bit more like this. Which, I mean, I get that kid, I don't know where he's at. That's a little bit about where I was, right? Michael said, like I actually also did the mentorship at Metal Toad, and I can tell you a whole other story about how I got to that, and I will. But my life now is I'm one of the partners at Untold Studio, and basically we are a agency that helps the organizations we love make the amazing products, tools, and websites that they deserve. How we came about that was it's a long story, and I will get to it. But before I get too boggled down into like my own story, I want to share some things, give you some things first. So a little bit more about Untold. It's just we exceptional products, excellence. We're a small shop, so we really go off of our like word of mouth and how good we are and how good we are at problem solving. So if we're not proving excellence, people are not going to come back to us. So that's kind of what we focus on. That's just a little bit more about what we've done. So it's just a little bit because I'm not actually here to talk about that. I'm actually here to talk about technology and like how to get started in it and the things that I've learned that I feel like I can share with you all to make it easier on you all. So let's first do broad strokes and let's talk in general about the tech industry. Okay, what is it? like in the tech industry? Well, I always say this: tech industry is it's a big word that encompasses a lot of different fields. All right, you can be in the tech industry. You can become a web developer, an iOS developer, a software developer, a cloud engineer, UX, information architect, strategist, consultant, all those things, and you still would be working on the tech industry. You're not confined to just programming. There's a wide number of things that you could be doing. And you could be doing all these things in various industries. You can be in a development agency, which is where I am at. You could be in a creative agency that kind of focuses more on design. You could be in a private corporation or a bank, helping their infrastructure and tech. And you can also be in education or or in a product company where you're creating tools to help other people learn. That's just to name a few. So tech industry, big word, encompasses a lot of fields. Just a little bit more about, this is my life as an accountant. I just keep going back to that because anytime I'm having a bad day in industry, I just think about this picture. I'm like, wow, man, it's not as bad. My life now is a little different. I understand that you all are learning how to code, and you'll eventually will go up to a tech company, and there's a lot of talk about the tech culture and what's tech culture like, and every company is different, but there is a big emphasis on the culture. That's important because as you are learning, we're solving problems. So a lot of times we're stressed, right, trying to solve these problems. So you're dealing with a lot of stressed out people solving problems. So you want to make it as comfortable as possible for these stressed out people solving problems. So there's a big step on fomenting a good tech culture. Also, developers are skilled individuals. So you run into situations where they tell you you get pampered a little bit. So companies are really enticed. They are really wanting to make it really comfortable for you to stay there because developers tend to jump from one place to another. So what happens is they'll be like, hey, we have beer, and hey, we have wine, and there's like a foosball table, and you're like, but it's too cold in here. And so what's the tech culture like a little bit? It's actually just people talking all the time about problems, not necessarily always in front of a computer. Yes, there are people who are in front of their computers, coding along, but for the most part, you're just discussing how you're gonna go about solving the problem. And then there's a lot of just talking to your friends over foosball and late at night, not because you have to be there, just because you just want to be there. I'm sure in this journey that you're all taking and learning, this is kind of happen, and it will continue to happen. This is not how a tech setup looks like. If you're imagining that it's going to be a lot of computers, it's really not. Mine is very simple. It's just I know how Post-its work. I just went up to the bathroom, and when I came back, that's what was there left for me. But again, it's just a simple, it's just a monitor and then yourself. So I'm sure that I can only speak to what I am, which is a web developer. So like I said, there's many fields and many different industries, but I'll talk about a web developer and actually what you do once you're out there, right? So I'm pretty sure you all know this, but for those to get us all in the same boat, is a web developer just simply a programmer that focuses on the development of web applications, right? So you divide that into two sides, the front end and the back end. And so the front end deals with the client, which is computers, and the back end deals with servers, right? Is that new to anybody? I don't want to, we're all aware of this. I don't know how far along in your journey you are, but I've talked to 101 students that don't know this, so I'm glad I'm not talking to them. And so front-end technologies, right, deal with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You all know that, and these are just the foundational languages. Really, that's the ones that you're learning now. That's just, I really think that as a student, it's really easy to start with a language like HTML and CSS and JavaScript because the feedback loop is so quick that you know whether you did something wrong or not immediately. And then that kind of feedback loop and that reinforcement helps you think that, okay, I'm not crazy, I see progress working, right? And so starting with the front end is always a good idea when just starting out. And so the notion here is that those three are the foundation languages, and so you want to keep building up on that. you are already taking the first steps by being in a boot camp, right, where they're teaching you all these stuff, but you have to constantly be learning new things. And so there are supplemental resources to what you learn here. And the ones that I personally use that have helped me throughout my career, and especially when I was starting, were just these three, right? Treehouse, Code School, and Code Academy. I remember taking Code School's jQuery and I was being like, what? Help me. But what is important is, and this is like something that I have to tell you, is getting a mentor, somebody that like cares about you. I can't express how much this one person influenced my career. If it wasn't for my mentor, which I met through Thinkful, I don't think I would even be in Portland. He was the one who saw my potential, saw my drive that I wanted to learn, and he kind of like directed me into the right way. And then at the end, he was also the one who told me like, hey, would you want to work up here in Portland? I was living in LA at the time, and he was the one who like kind of put that idea in my head. I was like, no, why would I move to Portland? Like, what's in Portland? So, well, a job, buddy. It's like, do you want it? So here I am. So if I were to give you like one piece of advice that really changed my life, and I hope it does the same for you all, it would be like getting a mentor. Where you would get that, I think it's kind of up to you all. I think that the congregation that you're building and student like working together is kind of a good foundation for that. But somebody that you can feel like you can talk to, because as you all know, when you're hitting your head against the table because you can't solve a problem, it's really nice to have the instructor there that can help you out. So keeping those connections going. And this is pretty much how I feel about my mentor and me. The other thing that I want to talk about, just in starting in tech, and that's where you are all at, is to understand that tech is a skill-based career. What that means is you either know how to do it or you don't, right? And you have to display the fact that you know how to do it. It's not I found that with accounting, I could be like, yeah, I know taxes, but I didn't have to show the returns that I had done to prove that I knew taxes, right? But with being in tech, you do have to showcase what you do know and what you don't know how to do. And so this is the moment where I would say enter the portfolio. It's a skill-based career, so with your portfolio is how you show to prospective employers what you know how to do. And so not only are you like verifying and letting them know, like, here, I do know how to do these things. You can also drive the conversation in the interview by showcasing your portfolio pieces. That way you're not as scared when you go into a meeting, like, what are they going to ask me? Or what kind of questions should I prepare for? You kind of have your own basic plan of attack of how you want to be seen in that interview. Please.
I can add to this.
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're going into the tech field, especially as an engineer who's expected to be a developer, who's expected to make something, a successful interview is usually one where you demonstrate you are able to have a creative process and come to a result somehow in your field. So for a web developer, you may show how you do your static content generation, your dynamic content generation, how it's tied to a backend. Or if you're like a low-level firmware engineer, you might show how you're able to use algorithms and like program on low-level hardware.
Right.
Being able to guide that conversation is really good.
Right. Also, I'll stop here and just talk a little bit about like what I did. With the portfolio, when I first started out, I was basically self-taught. I taught myself how to HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then I met my mentor. My mentor like taught me like, oh, you know these things? Do you know these other things? And then kind of led me the way there. By the time I was ready to become then a employed developer, I really wanted to work in Metal Toad. So I went to Metal Toad's website and I looked for all the things that they were looking for. And again, tech being a skill-based career, you have to prove that you know how to do those things. So I saw what they were looking for, and then I tailored my portfolio to the things that they're looking for to showcase to them that I know that I can do the job that they're trying to hire. Now as a business owner, I really appreciate if somebody, like if I'm gonna hire somebody, it's because I have a problem that I need solving. And so I can see how they're trying, anybody, not just Metal Toad in this case, but in my case it was, an employer is trying to solve a problem. So telling them and showing them that you can solve the problem would be huge for them. Because there's a lot of risk in hiring anybody, right? You don't know if they're going to work out or not, but by proving that you can work out, it puts you leaps ahead of other developers that might be interviewing. So the other part is that with web development in general, like we're all in it together, right? The whole open source community, like I'm sure you've Googled how to do this, and Stack Overflow is the first place that comes up like, hey, we got you. This is how you do it, right? We're all together, we're doing it together, and that goes along not just for Stack Overflow, but also when you're working. You'll be working in groups all the time, and basically you're not doing it alone. So if you think you have a problem that you might not be able to solve, or you're going to an interview and you're like, oh, I don't know exactly how to do it, I hope, just know that you're not going to be doing it alone. And like I mentioned, the open source. People want you to succeed. And so this might sound like a lot of information, maybe not. Just don't let it throw you off, because apart from hearing all this, right, you're also trying to figure out how to solve that one function. As I'm talking, you're probably like, oh, should I do a var or a let, or I don't know what languages you're all using, or a const. And this might feel like a lot, so don't let it throw you off, keep going. And so I've kind of spoken about these things to other groups, and I hear a lot of like fears or challenges that they'll come up. And so I've gathered some of the ones that I hear the most. And one of them is like, am I too late to start on web development? And the answer is never. Like I started after a almost 7-year career in accounting, but also web development changes so quickly that we're all learning it at the same time, right? When React came out like 3 years ago, everybody who touched React was new to React. And so we're all learning it, we're all learning constantly, and that's never gonna go away. That's always gonna be the case. Technology moves incredibly fast. Getting good at learning is kind of the key in this field. Am I crazy for doing this? Yes, absolutely, and that's exactly why we need you in tech, right? We need bold people that are curious about solving problems. So pretty nuts for doing this, and awesome to have you. And can I do this? Heck yeah, you can. Been there many times where I think I can't solve a problem, and then I do. Also, we have donuts. I used to put beer. We have beer in there, but like I'm not drinking beer anymore, so I said donuts. Whatever, to each his own. And then how long will it take me? Well, I can only speak to about how long it took me to do it. It took me about a year to become a rookie. It took me about 4 months to learn the basics, and about another 4 months to build my portfolio. That is just basically like I did nothing but like study and look for the answers and see what I liked and what I did not like. And a lot of work was put into my portfolio. And then a little secret, yeah, loving what you do kind of just helps everything in general. Doesn't feel like work. Certainly did not feel like doing tax returns at 8 o'clock on a Friday. Why is my girlfriend so beautiful? She made me write this out. Anyway, the next steps I would say was just to keep going. I know you don't have to jump in; you're kind of already there. Just to keep going and stick with it. I have a couple questions that Michael sent out to me that I could speak to, but I'm actually curious to see if you all have any questions for me.
So I have a question.
Please.
So you basically are the epitome in regards to the development of the merit-based system, where you learn your skill sets on your own, and a mentor guiding you through the process. But for the most part, you were self-study and learning on stuff, processing.
Right.
The question is, when you got into the environmental code, what's one thing that you learned that you wish you had done before?
Sure, yeah, it's one of the ones that I have here. I can tell you off the top of my head, but let me see what I wrote. Yeah, so that's funny. So one of the things that I learned in Metal Toad actually was after being like an actual developer, like surrounded by other developers, where I had just been by myself, like learning. is it's actually very familiar, like a service industry. It was very, very familiar. Like it's like a count, like doing taxes. You know, somebody comes to you with a problem, and then you're like, yeah, I can fix your problem, and then you fix their problem and give it to them. So that was felt very comfortable in that environment and building software. That was very comfortable. What was new to me was not realizing how much collaboration there really is. And then you get into the thick of it, like actually dealing with personalities, like how to talk to different types of personalities. I'm very like gung-ho and like, let's do this. And somebody might be like, well, actually, I like to take my time. And so like learning to deal with all those types of personalities was something that I didn't think was going to be that. A little part of me that feared that I was going to be by myself and doing it myself, I feared that, but when I got into Metal Toad, I actually was kind of expecting that, like, just let me do it, and realizing that that's not the case. Companies don't usually silo developers. It's actually bad practice to just let them be by themselves. And so understanding like how to, more soft skills, like this whole time I was concerned with hard skills, right? Learning how to do this function, how to not do this function, and then realizing that there's a huge component on just like being cool that I had to learn. Oh, and then you know what? Another challenge just going into it was the lingo, like, which the knowing what's a framework, what's a library, like, and feeling comfortable saying those words. Like, for me now, yeah, that's kind of how I speak. But when I was an accountant, I was like, oh yeah, I'm working on this framework, Angular, and then I felt like, am I doing it? Am I not doing it? Or when they would speak to me like, hey, what frameworks do you know? And I was like, JavaScript. Like not knowing those things, I feel like was a challenge. And also, as I was seeing, you know, my students go into interviews and they're not feeling comfortable with talking in more technical terms, and versus the ones who did, getting comfortable with technical terms and stuff and being able to speak about them goes a long way. Yeah, those would be the two I would say. Any other questions? Yeah, I can talk all day, really. Open book.
Well, I have another question.
So while you were working in accounting, were you constantly developing, like in your off time? Was that just like a hobby at that point?
So, yeah, so it was taxes. I did both. Not that you care, but I did both audit and tax. And so in the tax season, it was like 80-hour work weeks, and I was the chump of the group. My fellow accountants were doing like 100 hours and stuff. I was only doing 80, and I was like, Cesar, you got to do better. And I would work from like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m., 8, and then I would get home at 8, which was miserable. And then I would just in front of my computer, like trying to solve a problem. Or I wanted to do Euler problems. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're like algorithm problems, and they get more complicated. I remember while I'm doing taxes, I would trying to do the Euler problems in my head, like, oh, I got it. And then I would write it down, and then I would keep doing this other stuff. So that was more of the experience. So when tax season ended, then I was like, oh, thank God. And then I just like could do it more. Go ahead.
Okay. Did you ever work on Euler's distinct partitions?
I did not.
Okay.
I think I did the first two, whatever those are.
All right.
But I'll look into it. So,
Yeah, you went from accounting, which is a very structured kind of culture, to development, which seems to be much looser, more self-driven. Did you have any problems adjusting to that, like mentally? Or?
No, not at all. It was like a welcome change, Also, the fact that what I really liked was the fact that you had to explain why that's better, and the fact that it's like there's a reason why you're going that way, like why. And then if it's just like, yeah, you could do it that way, you can do it this way. I choose to do it this way. It's like, cool. In accounting, I didn't have a lot of why. It was more like, no, just do it this way. And also, I like the conversation. Well, this is my experience in accounting, right? And I like the conversation of like, what led you to make that decision? Why? Genuinely, why? Not to challenge your authority as like my manager or something, but it's because like I am learning, and you clearly saw something that I didn't, and I want to understand where you're coming from, so that I can add that to my mental model of how this should work. And so that's why it was a welcome change. I was just like so stoked that to be able to have those conversations, whereas before I wasn't able to.
Based on what you just said, have you ever thought about, in your new life as a programmer now, have you ever thought about like taking that exact principle of being open-minded about problem solving and then taking that back to accounting and like saving some people that were where you were?
Sure. And I mean, if anybody's thinking of going to accounting, stay here. Don't go. I'll save you the hassle. But at the same time, also, and I think this is key, is there's a lot of people that really liked accounting, and that blew my mind. It's like, what? But there they were. They're excited at 7 a.m. I remember friends of mine had like T-shirts in their drawers. They wouldn't even go home. They would just like put on a new T-shirt and keep like. All my Facebook friends are accountants, by the way. Well, from back home, they're all like, I'm a senior auditor at Deloitte. I'm like, great, it's awesome. Let me see. I think Michael had a couple. The questions that I don't know how I was trained. Some of the challenges getting my foot in the door. I really I think I spoke to those, like the portfolio is kind of how you would showcase because you're new, you don't have that experience, so that's kind of what will drive the conversation. And then I think lastly is if I've learned anything from doing my own business, and to that it's like one of my partners told me this really funny thing that I think applies to it is like you learn how to play the guitar to be in a band. You learn to play a guitar to learn how to sell T-shirts, and that's kind of how it feels. I learned how to program to like go out and do business, right? Like the last thing I do feels like it's programming, although I do a ton of that. It just feels like the other part of their work is so important too. So. If you're thinking that approach, knowing that that's going to be a thing too. Luckily, in programming, we learn to learn, so nothing is really scary, right? You're just like, well, yeah, I didn't know how to do database schemas, and look at me now. Like, yeah, I didn't know how to do marketing. Look at me now, Yeah, I didn't know how to talk to people, but look at me now, And so that never goes out. And I think I think being a programmer really helped me with that stuff. Like, I'm not afraid to learn something new and fail, because when you're writing that JavaScript, or that console error is always there, so you're used to it, kind of. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So even though you went on the website to Metal Toad, one definitely worked for Metal Toad, what was your first month like there? It's like, okay, I'm in the door, I'm working there. Uh-oh. I mean, how much expectation was on you at that point?
Yeah, my first month there was like this, and I remember asking other developers and what are you working on? And I remember them explaining these super complicated products that they were building, and I knew what I knew, and to me I was just like, they're gods, how do they know all that? I remember one person specifically, he explained this whole process and kind of tailored how I view programming. He wasn't building a program, he was building a city. He had bridges and buildings that took care of everything, and I was just like, this is exactly what I want to be doing, and I'm going to follow them. And so we used to do, we still do, but at that time we used to do Agile, right? Is everybody familiar with Agile? Okay, so just real quick, It's just every 2 weeks we deliver something. And how do we break that something? We do stories, which is like user is able to log in and user is able to log out. And each one of those are stories. We compile all those, and then a bunch of developers sit in a room and say like user is able to log in. We say that's a 2, and we use the Fibonacci sequence like 1, 2, 5, 8. And we say user is able to log out. That's a 3. And then we go through the whole list. And then the first 2 weeks we just grab one and we do it, we code it, and at the end of the 2 weeks, we look back at our amounts of points that we did, and let's say that we did 30, and then that, from then on out, becomes our velocity. And then we know that we can do 30 points every 2 weeks. And so, rinse and repeat. The next 2 weeks, we expect to do 30 because we knew we could do 30, and we keep going. The sizing of the 1 and the 2 and the 8 is based on how complicated you think that task is going to be. Fair enough? Did I... But, barely touching on it. So then when I first started and they were talking about, okay, what are you gonna do? They would always, because they want me to succeed, they would give me the CSS tasks. Hey, do the CSS. I hated that. Don't give me the CSS task. Like, give me that complicated one over there. I was like, hey, easy, buddy. It's like the CSS task. And I was like, come on, but I can pair with him, and we can do it. Just don't give me CSS, for the love of God. So I had to do a couple CSS ones, and then every once in a while they would throw me a bone and give me a hard one, and so I would use those opportunities to like stay there, right, and like get better, like not coast, but like keep pushing myself. So that genuinely that's how it was, and so the project finished, and then. You're in an agency model, so it's kind of like who's the team you want to build your product, right? Who's available, who's not on a product, and who's something you want on your team. And I think that like drive to be like, don't give me the easy ones. Like, come on, I'm learning here. Help me in that they were like giving me even more complicated problems, and my learning accelerated a little bit faster than everybody else. But that's just me. Somebody could say like Cesar was the worst, but. I think that's how I was in the first year.
All right.
Yeah.
This one behind me?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, I think this will be relatively quick. But of the people that you know in the software industry, do most people have an experience similar to yours, where you want to do more than what people are expecting you to be capable of, or have you also encountered a lot of people that get in and there's a lot expected of them, and they're just not quite there?
Yeah. So, there's like a whole gamut, right? There's and it depends on which specific we're talking. Like we had an internship program at one point, and what we gave the interns was too easy, and so they wanted like something a little bit more fun, more challenging. And so I've had that experience that I'm talking about. But I've also had the experience where we expect, not at the junior level, because at the junior level there's this massive safety net that it's on the senior to look out for the junior. So if the junior messes up, which there's no messing up, you're just learning, right? But if this junior does anything that's not cool, it's on the senior, it's not on the junior. So that philosophy was what we had over there. And that's the philosophy that I like really encourage you to look for in whatever job you go to. And so that was never a problem. The problem became later on when you consider yourself a senior, and then okay, we'll do this, and then you can't do that because then like we kind of expected you to be able to, I think do a multi-site Drupal thing, and you said that you're a senior Drupal developer, and then you can't do that. Then that's a problem. And that could be because in the interview you said you could. You don't, and that portfolio didn't show it, but we saw what you could do, and we thought you could. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I expand upon that, as far as junior, mid-level, and senior, one of the things we've been really clear about is that when you're applying for junior level positions, like Cesar said, there's a certain amount of, we expect you to be in a learning curve at this point. But when you start applying for other
job, mid and senior, you should have the vernacular down. You should have some of the major concepts down, scheme and structures. And so while you're a junior, that's the time to really hit hard nights and weekends, building up your skill set so that you have that. So that way in 2 to 3 years, when you get into that interview for a mid position, that you are able to, because there's a higher expectation. And so you have to keep evolving and growing even after you get hired.
Yeah, and I would say like the first year is the crucial part. Like getting your foot on the door. That's why you're heavy-handed on that portfolio. You want to go in with a bang. And the first year, I would say, it's just you just soak up as much information as possible, and that alone, and you're going to get a lot of information. So you don't have to worry about seeking it too much. There's plenty to do. But after that first year, then you've been doing it for a year. It doesn't get past that. The challenges might be different. But you get it. You learn a library that they want to use or that they've been using that you haven't used before, and then you just have that now. You will start catching on patterns that are normal in every library, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of like how this other one does it. So like the learning is a little quicker. You can jump in and be more effective quicker. And so it's by having those experiences of actually like, okay, like, trying it, and bugging your senior, like, hey, yo, come here, help me out with this. Well, this is what I tried, and this is why it didn't work. What's your thoughts? And then those conversations for a whole year, I would say. After that, you just like flying. Yeah.
What would you say, excuse me, is something that boot camp graduates, I know boot camps differ in the curriculum, don't learn in boot camp that would be really helpful for them to know when they get into the job?
Other than the fact that you learn very well, like the collaboration, right? You learn very well, like how to work on teams. You work very well with knowing who you can count on and who you're kind of like helping along the way. Those things you learn very well. But you also have, you're all on the same page. You all know the same things. And when you go into another company, it's like being a freshman in college or something. There's the 8th graders and there's the 9th graders and there's like the guy who's in college, right? And so I would say like understanding that they've been here a while, and if they tell you to do a job a specific way, to be receptive to that idea, even though it breaks every mental paradigm you have of how this is supposed to work, being open to that, because those are the moments that will teach you how to do things differently. That's kind of what I've noticed, but I could say that about anything. Like when you go into a new group, it could also be because I'm super loud. But anyway, I've learned to just be respectful of the people who were there before, and so that's kind of what I would say.
Thank you. So in short, when in Rome, do as the Romans?
I mean, a little bit. If the Romans are cool. If not, just get out.
Follow-up question.
Please.
I know like the computer science majors, they learn stuff like algorithms and design patterns and stuff like that. How much is that necessary in the real world?
No, but if I had a person with a CS degree here would tell me absolutely, and so we can get into it. But so it's like this. It's you would have to be dealing with so much data at such a higher level for any of the optimization of those CS things to even be a fact. You do learn things that would make a loop better. Like you do understand that doing memorization, which is instead of having to loop through everything, you keep an array of things that you've looped at before, so that it's faster. So you don't have to loop through everything all the time. You already have things that you've looked at, and so instead of having to loop and waste time, you just look at those things. That, apart from that, at a higher scale, it's minimal. But I will say that a CS degree is completely, it will help you with programming. But I don't think they're necessary. I think they're valuable, but you don't need to have one to be able to program. They are very valuable, and CS degrees, and that's something that I've learned from my colleagues that have CS degrees. And when I started studying more of the stuff that they talk about, that they would see in gaps in my knowledge, I looked at, I was like, oh, I can see how this is valuable, but I'm never going to write any of this. And so that's just my 2 cents. You had a question. I'm so sorry, man.
I'm just going to follow up on what you were saying.
Yeah.
So I'm from the other side of the spectrum. I have a CS degree, and I don't disagree with you.
Oh, sweet.
I think that there are a few things that a CS degree would offer you that actually help in the programming field as opposed to what you'd learn at a boot camp. Because at a boot camp, at its core, you get taught how to collaborate, how to learn new skill sets quickly, how to recognize who are your peers and who are the people who are well above you that you should look up to and ask for advice. These are all very important in getting yourself moving. The core problems you deal with in computer science, like the fundamentals of building state diagrams or creating efficient algorithms, only tend to matter if you are working in a very large structure where performance actually becomes a concern. Most smaller companies, performance isn't really a concern. You can handle everything with a few web servers. If you work for a large corporation, like if you're working at Google, that does start to matter because the difference in, say, taking twice as long to search for something can delay all the other users on your system, and that compounds very quickly. You also deal with like how to do storage solutions when you're dealing with users from many different countries. Like what's the best way to store all your friends in a contact list?
How to search for those friends.
Yeah,
And what's the best optimal way to do a search when you're talking about millions of people.
Yep.
But at the same time, those problems have been solved. The CS degree like helps you know like where to go and where not to go. But also we have to understand like web is like up here.
Yep.
And we have like you know the hardware itself, and then within the hardware we have like Linux kernels and like lower and lower and lower, and so we need to understand what part of the stack we are actually talking about. And so you're learning how to be up here. So kind of those other things have kind of been solved on the way to up here. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, yeah.
Computer science is, like computer science programming in general is just building abstractions on top of abstractions. Like the C++ compiler is an abstraction on top of assembly, which is an abstraction that eventually leads into binary, but that gets compiled into binary, which is run on the low-level operating system kernel. That becomes low-level machine instructions on the processor, and so on. But we built it this way so that we can teach ourselves to use these products better.
I have a couple things to add to that too. A couple of thoughts. Number one, we've passed the point of any one person knowing everything about a given item. So if you think you're going to wait till you know everything about JavaScript or C# and be an expert at it before you can then apply for a job or feel comfortable in a job, it's going to be very difficult for you. We just don't have the capacity to do that. Part of it is just understanding the main concepts, and you'll start seeing patterns, like Cesar said, patterns that, okay, this is how I expect the program to work. Let me figure out the syntax and move forward. So in that regard, just be open to the fact that you're not everything. Understanding your limitations is a great asset for you. It'll let you know when you need to ask questions and when you need support. When you go to that mentor, you should have already tried to figure out how to solve it. Say, okay, I've looked at this, I've done this, this, and this. I've tried it to work, it doesn't work. I think it should do this. And then they understand that you at least made a shot at it, and you try to figure it out, and you explain the logic without having to try and dig it from you. And then they can then help you, oh, you just need to use this part here. Or in some aspects, it could simply be a fact that, hey, we had to use this really obtuse way to solve this dumb problem that you wouldn't have known about because it's a proprietary, fix that we had to kind of jury-rig the system so it would actually work. And so you're not going to know that from any of your training because they had to collaborate and solve that problem. The other thing, kind of back to your point about doing a CS degree, the way to think about boot camps and CSS degrees is that when you're doing a boot camp first, you're basically being taught the practical application of coding and Sage and Cesar said, learning, collaborate, work together, and quickly learn skill sets. And so when you're finished and you get hired, ideally you continue your education in many different forms to improve yourself. You do want to maybe, if they want to pay for your education, start taking some classes in computer science degree so you can get a stronger foundation in the theories. So it's kind of like, which do you want to do first? You want to get the theories and the processes and all the algorithms first, or do you want to get the practical application? We've had a number of students come here to our school who already have a CS degree, but they didn't have their particular program didn't do a lot of hands-on practical application. So they've got a lot of theory, but they don't have a lot of hands-on. And so they come here to get some more practical application. So your education is valuable just to know that it's not the end point, and so that you will have to grow and learn even after that. So I just want to add those 2 points on.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing to what Michael said. There's myth out there in society that there's the people who aren't in the field. It's called the computer messiah. The guy comes in, he can put his hands on your machine, and he will run everything, and it will run perfectly. And CDW, one of those parts supplier, recently did a thing about a guy who was supposedly like a computer messiah. And it blew my mind because the thing is, that is so far from the truth. I worked in the Air Force. I did Fortran programming for them. Today, you can't do much. There's not much Fortran programming out there. One of the reasons I'm here is because I got a little bit behind working in other things, but now I understand the culture, and it's one of the things I'm looking forward to. I'm just about ready to graduate, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, I've been there, so yeah, absolutely.
And one of, I think the hardest part is not going to be what I have a lot of skills coming in, but the hardest part is I'm used to the waterfall model of leadership, which is what most companies are. Agile just blew my mind, but I love it. You know, it's great.
It takes some getting used to, I'm sure, working 2 weeks at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to say, just because we keep touching on it, but it's the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you all have heard of it, but it's basically where I explain it like this, like, you know, you've kind of are okay in your journey when you feel comfortable with knowing that you don't know it. So when you're just comfortable being like, oh, hey, I'm doing this React project, and you've never touched React, and you're like, okay, well, let's check it out. And then you just look at it. You know you don't know it, but you're comfortable. You know that you could probably figure it out. You've seen enough code already that you're like, I can look at it. What's the problem here, you know? And again, you've never touched it, but you go like, oh, here's where it's crashing. Oh, what's doing before that? Oh, it's probably this. Or you Google that word, and you're like, you read it, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. That's supposed to work. And so when you're at times when you don't have that realization, and that's the only reason I'm sharing it with you, to save you the grief, is you're not gonna know it all. You're gonna feel at times that you're fake and that you don't know anything, and why are these people paying me money? Like, I know nothing. And so understanding that we all feel that way all the time. It's shared, and nobody talks about it to each other. It's the same feeling for all of us. And so we all share it, so, you know, we all understand it. And so just get that out of your mind, you know, like, well, shake that off and just keep going.
Touching on the idea of the computer messiah, what most people would think of as the computer messiah is in fact just a senior Google search analyst. That's what I call them.
Yeah, and there's so much to learn. One of the exciting things about this technology is that it's a wide spectrum. We've had students hired in many different types of roles, and very seldom are they the exact same role. There's no cookie cutter role out there. Metal Toad is a different shop than the students that are working at Plaid Electric out in Beaverton, and different than the students that are working at New Relic, and different than the students that are working across the street at Simple. You know, there's just a lot. There's no, you know, cookie cutter. You have to become very comfortable with, you know, ambiguity. And quite frankly, that's what technology is all about. When you think about, software development is all about. You have business people come to you and say, I have a problem, I need you to fix it. And you've got to take this ambiguous problem and take it and quantify it and put it into some sort of code to make and solve that problem. And you have to talk to them and figure things out. You take that ambiguity and create some structure to it and create order. And that's what they're hiring us for, is to actually solve unique problems. If the computer can do it, they're going to have the computer do it, not have you do it. If it can't do it, then they need you to do that. We'll give you an analogy. I used to work for an insurance company, and we had a contact center. And all the CSRs kept complaining about, oh, the agents don't know, we serve internal customer agents, and they would complain about, oh, the agents don't know this and don't know that. And I had to explain to them that you do realize that if the agents knew how to do this, you wouldn't have a job, and you wouldn't be solving these problems, because the computer actually solved 90% of the problems for that insurance company. The people that are actually working were handling all the issues and problems related to the computer couldn't solve it. Hey, here's a situation where you've got this person getting a discount and they're 45 years old, and it's a youth discount. It's a problem here.
Yeah.
Go figure it out. Why is it happening? So you're going to be, that's the cool part. Let's face it, you want to be challenged in your career. You want to be engaged in growing. And a lot of that's going to be due to the fact that, you know, you get a new challenge, a new problem. If we mastered a problem right away, what fun would that be if you do it for 5 or 6 years? When he mastered accounting, say they mastered accounting.
I don't think I mastered that.
Okay. Well,
Barely put in the work. To be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah. Better for the doubt. But if your job was to play checkers with a 5-year-old day in day out, that would get boring very fast, right?
Yeah.
You want to be engaged. You want to be trying to solve problems. So this is what we're trying to teach you here, and boot camps try to teach in general is how to solve problems and how to tackle them and break down those problems into manageable tasks and then move forward. So.
Yeah, anyway, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep you hostage here. And go on and do it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would love nothing more to help you all in your journey. So, yeah, thanks again.
Thanks again. Yeah, you're welcome. Can you put it back up so they can see your actual
Oh, I'm
address?
so sorry. Hey, you can call me. Not.
They were taking pictures as you were pulling it off. And there's more pie and pizza. Feel free to help yourself. Take on the way out.
Have a good one, dude.
Thanks, man.
I'm safe.
Sage.
Yeah.
All right, Michael.
I'm going to turn this off. I want to talk to you real quickly if you're okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay. You get business cards? I'd like to see your business card.
Oh,
Thank you.